It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Just after 4 o'clock with you from the Entertainment and Sports Arena today, where tonight the Mystics will take on the LA Sparks. You'll hear it, of course, on the Team 980. And we're here because, well, I'm here. Anthony is in our DC studio as usual. And then he's going to make his way here as fast as he can after, because we're sitting on the floor tonight, and so that's why we're here. We're mostly going to still talk Commanders. There's a chance that Big Boss Man Mike T stops by around 6:30, but other than that, it's a normal show. I just happen to be sitting in a different place, and it's a show, Anthony, on a Friday where we get to preview a football game. Hey, welcome to late August. We'll obviously have a real football game just 2 weeks from now. That's pretty exciting.
Very exciting. The season, I'm not going to lie, Craig. The off-season, the preseason, training camp, it's all flying by, low-key.
It is definitely flying by. I will say that week one is one of my least favorite weeks of the year for the very simple reason that the rhythm, once you get into week two for us, we have a game to review. Week one's weird, and I guess the bye week is kind of the same, where it's like, what do we do on Monday and Tuesday besides the same thing that we've been doing for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks? Because like a week from, Tuesday, not Monday. Tuesday, the 53 gets named. So Monday, we will do our final 53-man roster projection. I think, Anthony, we might even do, I don't know how many I want to do, because like 70 is the number that Dan Quinn keeps throwing out. Mm-hmm. And we're going to do a 53 today, by the way, on the back end of the Dotson trade. So we'll update going into the game, give our best guesses, and then on Monday, we'll obviously take another stab at it. And then I actually think the deadline might be 4 o'clock. So basically, as our show starts on Tuesday, we'll have the 53-player roster. But Dan Quinn keeps talking about how it's actually a 70-player roster because of the practice squad and the way that it works now. And you can call players up and multiple times throughout a year before you have to actually be like, no, that player's actually on our 53. So you have multiples of that. You have veterans that make the team now. But also, we know that some of those players are going to come from other teams. They're not going to just take 90 down to 70. They'll take 90 probably down to like 65 and then bring in some guys potentially from other teams. But I do think a lot of them. So maybe we'll do a 53 and a 17 on Monday. We'll figure that out on Monday. That'll be Monday's problem. As for today, will Jayden Daniels play this weekend? That was the question to Dan Quinn, and he gave a very simple – well, actually, he give a very simple no. Anthony, did you see his exact quote?
He will not Batman.
That is correct. I think Ben Standig was Batman in this particular case. I think Ben asked the question. So, Ben, next time we have Standing on, do we just call him Batman and not explain?
Yeah, let's see if he figures it out.
Okay, so we have that to look forward to. I will have to confirm that Standig was indeed Batman. But yeah, Jayden was asked, or is Jayden going to play? No. It also sounds like Marcus Mariota is not going to play. The good news is that Mariota, Deron Payne, and others are not hurt long term. A couple of guys that kind of took it easy to practice or got pulled out of practice by the end. But Dan Quinn saying today that those guys are not going to play and weren't going to play. So it's not injury related. It's a choice, which is good when you get to make the choice in terms of players, whether or not they're going to play. I saw earlier today actually on Twitter, Anthony, did you see Nikki's tweet about this?
I don't think so.
So Nikki put out a tweet that I don't know whether she did it digitally. I didn't click on the photo, but whether it was either digitally or, last year's, she took a picture of the card, but she had taken the red line through the roster of all the players that weren't going to play. And she said it's going to be even worse this year. And so I'm expecting 30, 40 names that aren't going to play. And that's also based off the fact that DQ said today that there's only probably less than 10 spots available. So they've made a lot of decisions. And realistically, having done a couple of 53s, that totally tracks. What this preseason game is about for them is, okay, those spots. And even if that's like one at every position, like that's still a lot. But you're talking about a couple of backup O-line spots. Does a fourth tight end or a fourth running back? Who's the third running back? I think depending on how some other things go, and if Driscoll is awesome, does Driscoll wind up making the team based off of how he plays? Because he's going to play a lot as a third quarterback. The backup O-line spots are one of the really, really big ones. Obviously the last defensive end spot I think is going to be Jamin, but let's see what happens. Can John Baptiste or someone else make a play and force the issue, force some funky numbers there? Linebackers a little bit more open behind Luvu and Wagner, although I think Michael Walker's probably got a hold on that spot, that third spot. And then is there a fourth? / who's the fourth? And then obviously the defensive backfield. What's going on at corner? What's going on? How many safeties wind up making it? So there's plenty of questions. But in a lot of ways, this is a showcase game for a lot of guys that it's almost been decided you're not going to make the roster. Can you make the practice squad? Because I think basically anybody on the 90 is eligible to make the practice squad. Not eligible is not the right word, but like has made enough of a case in camp. Like there's a very few. I'm talking 5 to 7 guys that I'm like, there is no way, no matter how well they play on Sunday, that they can't make the practice squad on this team. And that's great because I remember being on the beat, Anthony, and I could have told you the first 15 cuts on most of this stuff. But whether it's like down roster receivers where you've got a ton of guys in the group, but like, are you telling me you really have a big difference in terms of practice squad viability between Davion Davis, Mitchell Tinsley, and I don't know, pick one other guy? Like, no, you don't. Some of the corners on the very back end, very unlikely. I think there's maybe one or two that I'd be like, yeah, that dude's probably not going to make the practice squad. But goes out and makes a great play, and if they had a good week of practice that we didn't see, always a chance. And so I think it's a really great showcase game, not just for the last chance to kind of stick around in this program and be a part of it, Anthony, but obviously the rest of the league is watching too. That's the beauty of the preseason game, and it's the beauty of being Sunday Night Football. You get to make the last impression on other executives as they're doing their 53s and circling guys they want for their practice squad. They're sitting in their office watching the game late Sunday night, getting ready for their meetings on Monday, and they look up and they see you score a touchdown. Well, let me watch that back. Let me see what this looks like on film. And maybe that gets you on a football team somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty about the preseason. Everybody's sort of kind of, given an opportunity this week to just go out there and make a play. And I think Dan Quinn, the entire time he's just been preaching, competitiveness, next man up, and things of that nature. So I think if everybody just has that same competitive edge that, he's been preaching, I think that's also like what he's going to be looking out for, just who's flying to the ball, who's sprinting every play. Like the little things matter. And I think as long as it shows up on tape, I think those guys will be able to, have a legitimate shot.
Yeah.
But I think every August we typically do have a Mr. August. Do you think anyone has like really emerged as a Mr. August? I feel as Mitchell Tinsley, when he made the roster last year, he was making play after play after play. Who else? Years before that, it was a running. Oh, Jared Patterson, I think
Jared Patterson's definitely been a Mr. August in the past.
Yes.
What was it? Rashad Ross was always the guy.
Yes.
When I was on the beat. Who is Mr. August this year? That's a great question. If people want to drop names in the chat on YouTube or tweet me at Craig Hoffman, I don't know that we're going to take calls on who's been the Commanders' Mr. August. I don't feel like we need to go all the way down that route. Yeah. But if you have any nominees and you can quickly get them to me in a digital forum, feel free to hit me with your Mr. August nominees, and perhaps we'll read a couple before we get into the kind of dotting of the I's and crossing of the T's of the Jahan Dotson trade that we will cover next, including a couple of points that I saw on a variety of platforms that made really good points about the whole Jahan Dotson trading within the division bit. So we'll get to that next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And I will mention again that we're streaming live on YouTube if you want to watch, because the chat did come through, Anthony, with some good names for Mr. August. About 90 seconds from now, we'll get back into the Jahan Dotson trade. But I think the right answer from this year has got to be Tyler Owens. Although I do think, Anthony, there is a chance that he winds up being more than Mr. August. Because the thing about Mr. August is it's the guy who plays his way onto the team and then doesn't do anything in the year. And typically, Mr. August is kind of faded away, not only in September now, but maybe 1 August later. Like Rashad Ross somehow was a multiple-time Mr. August winner and made like 1 or 2 plays really in his entire NFL career, certainly in his Washington career. And Tyler Owens, I think he's got a shot to be a pretty good player. Like, he's young, he's a UDFA, so I think that Tyler Owens got a chance to be better than a Mr. August, but for right now, guy who's played really well in camp, played his way onto the team, I think Tyler Owens is definitely this year's Mr. August.
I like that one. I think you're right. I think we could definitely see him throughout the season. I definitely think he's gonna make splash plays on special teams because that's really where like he's shown up. And then also, when he's been out on the field, he's been, he's forced a tackle for loss and always around the ball. To be honest, I think if you're a great player, you're always around the ball. He always seems to be around it. So I think special teams, while I definitely think he's going to have a huge impact.
He's gonna play for real this year on teams for sure.
Yeah.
So other names that got nominated: Olamide Zaccheaus. Like, he's a starting receiver and is a multi-year NFL veteran. Olamide Zaccheaus, ineligible to be Mr. August. De'Ami Brown, Mr. August. He looks like a different guy, so much so that allowed a trade of Jahan. I think that's an interesting nominee, but I do think, again, like, he's played a lot on teams and played very well on this team's for multiple years. He's certainly Mr. August as a receiver so far, although he's going to start, so I hope he's a lot more than Mr. August. And then some names from the past that came up: Cam Sims and Jimmy Moreland. Zach says Jeff Driscoll as well. So, yeah. I think there's some fun ones. Mike Q said Cam Sims, and I think Cam Sims is a different kind of preseason hero. Cam Sims is like a Logan Paulson type. Cam Sims is what you would call in baseball a 4A player. He's clearly an NFL talent who is better than the guys who weren't going to make the team. Yep. But he wasn't good enough to not play in the last preseason game. And Logan and I have talked about this quite a bit on Take Command, that Logan used to love the fourth preseason game because he went from – because he could kill people. Because Logan went from the guy who barely was scraping by, making the roster, to the best player on the field. And he would wreck people as a blocker. He all of a sudden went from like, oh, he's too slow, not mobile enough to be a good tight end, to be like, I can cook these fools. And like, Logan crushed fourth preseason games, and he enjoyed doing so. Because Logan was better than a 4A player. Like, Logan was a 10-year guy in the league. That is really, really hard.
Really tough to do.
But because his role was so limited, like, he was so good at what he did, but what he does is so limited, he always had to play in that game, and he always then got to do a little bit more. Like, he was a blocking wide tight end, and he got to, like, play full tight end, tight end one type of stuff. Yeah. So he always really enjoyed that. Okay. As for the Jahan Dotson discourse, it's been interesting now. We're over 24 hours from the trade. And the biggest gripe seems to still be from most people that don't like it or have reservations that the Washington Commanders traded him to the Philadelphia Eagles within the division. And I genuinely find a lot of this discourse laughable, Anthony, for a couple of reasons. And the main one is, if they thought Jahan Dotson was so good at football, not what they thought he could be, not what you thought he could be, not you, Anthony, you person out there who saw Jahan Dotson score a bunch as a rookie and were like, dang, this kid's going to keep growing and it's going to be awesome. If they thought he was that dude with that upside, they're not trading him. So in some ways, this is going to come down to what they've seen and what they know in their projection and how Jahan Dotson fits in their scheme versus how he fits in Philadelphia. And I don't know what the reasons are that Jahan Dotson has not been the same guy since the beginning of last year, but I think they look at it and they're like, we know here he's not going to be the same guy that we all maybe feared. If you're Dan Quinn and you're in Dallas trying to guard him when he was a rookie, that he's not going to be that guy in Washington. Something's not clicking. Something's not right. He clearly needs a refresh. But I'd also say this, Anthony. The thing that actually, I can't remember who made this comment. I think it was a YouTube commenter, so I apologize for not writing that down and shouting you out, whoever made this astute point. They have watched Jahan Dotson in the slot primarily for the entirety of camp. And the idea Jahan's going to cook the Washington Commanders specifically, and they're going to regret this trade. If Jahan Dotson was going to cook the Washington Commanders, with all due respect to Jahan, wouldn't he have been cooking their defense the entirety of the time? I'm pretty sure that they've watched Mike Sainristil as a rookie do just fine against Jahan Dotson, and that Dan Quinn isn't going to lose sleep the week of the Eagles because he thinks that Mike Sainristil all of a sudden can't cover Jahan Dotson. And, by the way, it's the same Dan Quinn and the same Joe Witt Jr. who have, for 2 years, game planned for him as coaches for the Dallas Cowboys. So they are familiar. They've seen it every single day. And they still were like, yeah, give us that third-round pick. So, again, could they be wrong? Could the reset in scenery be the thing that Jahan needs to reset himself? All possibilities. So I'm not going to sit here and arrogantly guarantee that this doesn't in any way, shape, or form bite the Commanders over the next couple of years that Jahan's an Eagle. He could score against them. He's very good at finding the end zone. He's a talented kid. And I personally, as a human being, wish Jahan Dotson the absolute best. But if they thought he was going to be awesome, they wouldn't have traded him. And they have seen him play the Washington Commanders every single day for the last month and a half. And they decided, we're good. He can go to Philly.
But do you think people are more upset about trading to a division rival or the compensation in which we got for Jahan?
I think there's people that are upset at both. I think that there's people that think he's worth more, and I would be hard-pressed to say that they're correct based off of the market of NFL trades, which, again, is multifactorial and very complicated because there are significantly better and more accomplished players than Jahan Dotson who got less compensation. But their contracts are significantly more, and that has to do a lot with the compensation. So, you get a third for Jahan and have to give up the fifth because he's got 2 years remaining at extraordinarily cheap money, meaning he's a very, very buy low asset. And one that, unlike a lot of the times that these types of players get traded, you don't have to pay him immediately. They've got a year to make a decision in Philadelphia on Jahan Dotson based off where he is contractually. So, Jahan's a good asset, which is why you get a good asset and a third-round pick in return. So I do think that that's part of it, but the in-division stuff is definitely something that I've seen quite a bit over the last, 24 hours since we've been talking about this and some of the discourse and listening to calls and to our other shows and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point about, Joe Witt Jr. and, everybody, preparing to have already schemed up for Jahan, I think, again, they don't make that decision without – and Cliff said it yesterday. They did consult him. He didn't really get into the specifics, but I think, he was okay with moving off of Jahan. But also – I think this also goes back to the point you had raised, I want to say like a week or two ago, about the physicality that Cliff Kingsbury's receivers, the kind of players that he wants. Jahan, I went back to watch both games. Like, even in the last game against the Dolphins, he failed to, really get a good block. And yesterday, Cliff was talking about Olamide Zaccheaus and how, he's willing to do anything and go out there and make a solid block. So, again, I think they know exactly what they want. I don't think Jahan fit that mode. And at this point, he wasn't, killing us. So I think we just got to charge to the game. And, we'll see him 2 times this season. I think everybody's going to look forward to that matchup against Jahan.
And sometimes these decisions are really hard, right? Because I bet you there's a piece of Adam Peters that is scared that Jahan, maybe this is the motivation he needed. Maybe 30 years from now, the Jahan Dotson life story, comes out and, he's like, man, that trade from Washington is the wake-up call that I needed. Yep. That's possible. But if he needed that wake-up call, you can't give it to him without trading him. You have to evaluate what a player is going to be for you. You can't or waste energy, waste time, waste resources guessing what he could be somewhere else. I think they had a really good idea what Jahan was going to be for them, which is nothing more than a rotational piece. And at that point, if you feel like you can get okay, a rotational piece in the third round, easy, and we get multiple more years of contractual control, and we open up reps for McCaffrey and Diami and Zacchaeus, who we trust more, and we're trying to figure out what they are, like that is, it kind of becomes a no-brainer. And so, again, I don't know what exactly happened with Jahan, because he is a guy that had a ton of promise. I think he had the right mental makeup. And frankly, last year during training camp, he was awesome. And he had a bad year. The head hasn't been in the game seemingly since. And like, if you had asked me this time last year, hey, a year from now, there's a really great coaching staff that comes in that preaches competitiveness, will Jahan Dotson adapt to it? I'd be like, yeah, obviously. And he just didn't. And so the last little piece of this, though, that I'll say, Anthony, too, I was on with JP earlier today, and he asked me about this, and I thought it was a great point. Like, everyone loves to kill Rivera because the draft picks, specifically in the first round, weren't good. And then you trade one of them, and everyone's like, how could you trade that first round? Like, how do those two thoughts go together in people's heads? I don't really understand that one. So I'm going to let people chew on that here in the commercial break. And actually, it's part of what I talked about with Clinton Yates. So earlier today, before I came here to the Entertainment Sports Arena, where the Mystics will play the Sparks tonight, and I'm broadcasting live because I'm going to the game, and they were nice enough to let me do the show here beforehand because there's not a lot of time between when the show ends and the game starts. Clinton Yates, he came to my house, Anthony, because Clinton's in town. Or he was for the afternoon, and then he's going on a family thing. So Clinton came to my house. We recorded a segment, and actually we sat on my couch and caught up about life. And then we went upstairs to the studio, and we recorded a segment, and we talked about Jayden's development and kind of that whole idea of flipping a roster in one off season. So that conversation was really, really good. One of my favorite sports conversations, frankly, that I've had with Clinton in a long time, because it was really cool and thoughtful. And we were asking each other a bunch of questions and kind of feeling out where we felt on it. And we're going to play it for you next.
The Washington
Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, where if you are watching, you will see for the second time in the history of the show, I am on the couch set, and I'm not on the couch set alone. It is not Alicia Clark next to me. It is my other best friend, famous friend of the show. Clinton Yates is in town, everybody.
What's up, kiddos? This is great. I just want you to know that this is the first time I've been here, like in my actual life, never mind in this studio, because I know people like the behind the curtain stuff, and they like to know about people's lives, and that's where we are. I'm in D.C., by the way, because my family is going on a trip, and none of them would wait for me. So I had to get here a day early to make sure I could leave with their caravan to go where we're going. And they weren't going to meet me there because it was too hard to get to Rehoboth, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll come a day early. And now we got an afternoon. So
now we got an afternoon. I get to see my friend. I'm really excited about
I
it.
know.
My friend's in my home, and I'm pumped.
So I have to tell you a quick story.
Okay.
So today I was doing a shoot. I'm talking a little out of turn here, but I was talking to a tennis player about Serena Williams, who is in the U.S. Open. We were doing an interview after Good Morning America.
Okay.
So I was downtown at the office on DeSale Street. And halfway through that, and I had to tape a pod after, I go to get a smoothie, shouts to Robex, and I've passed this guy, whatever, transient human being on the street, bottle of liquor. This is not abnormal for downtown D.C. He's not doing anything. No big deal. When I come back, I can hear him kind of yelling. He's getting loud. You're not really sure. You never really know a lot of times with mental health disorders what's going on with people. You leave people alone.
Yeah.
But there are some construction workers within earshot who have been done working, and they're now sitting on the curb, or what is it, just eating their lunch. By the time I get back upstairs where I'm going, I hear a lot of yelling. And it is clearly the guy who I passed before, and I'm thinking, oh, no, what is he doing? So I look out the window. He's in these construction workers' faces, and I'm thinking, oh, my God. This is going to be awful. Sure enough, went too far. These two dudes body slammed this guy and gave him the business.
Oh, no.
And then proceeded to get in their work truck and go along their day. And I was just like, rule one, kiddos, never mess with anybody who has to shower after work as opposed to before. Just know that. Anyway. It was a great welcome home moment. So,
life lessons on the streets of D.C.
Anyway.
With Clinton Yates. All right, that's our segment. No.
No, but so what I wanted to ask you about, we're doing things a little differently here.
Yeah.
'Cause over the past
Yates
week,
is here, so now he's running the show.
I know. Over the past week, the reason I brought this up is that I was asked a question on Around the Horn. Who do you think had the better preseason, Caleb Williams or Jayden Daniels? Yeah. And I said Caleb mainly because I think Caleb is dealing with more. He maybe has a better setup. There's more eyeballs. It's just kind of a larger operation that he's dealing with. But I was the only one. Everybody else loves what Daniels is doing, particularly Kevin Clark, who just said his big playability is unlike anything this team has ever seen in a while. Do we agree?
I mean, I agree with Kevin's point that the big playability that Jayden has as a runner, as a thrower, as a processor, as in everything. I mean, he's the best quarterback they've had since Alex Smith, and Alex Smith wasn't exactly a big play dynamo.
No.
So, like, Howell could sling it down the field, but, like, few and far between, far fewer and far between than we
and
anticipated.
he kind of had, like, meaty muscle downfield. I didn't feel that there was, I don't know, I didn't feel that he had the same sort of level of quarterbackery.
No,
if
for
that makes
sure.
sense.
I mean, otherwise they would have kept him.
Sure.
Various quarterbacks along the way could throw the ball a long way. Cool.
Right.
But on a consistent, like, I'm going to make the right read, and I can put this ball anywhere. Jayden's different. He is absolutely different. Whether it's better than Caleb, I think, is a different question.
Yeah, I do
and
too.
that's, I've had a couple conversations about that recently. I think in part because obviously Jayden's here, Caleb's on Hard Knocks. They're the 1 and 2 pick. These questions come up, and when you are on a station and in a host role where you cover the number 2 pick day in, day out, these things tend to be conversations. We even had a caller earlier this week who lives in Chicago, listens to the show, and he has this debate with his Bears fans friends. And at the end of the day, like, I think underselling Caleb Williams, even as much as we love Jayden Daniels, is probably like, I don't say it's a mistake because I don't want to feel like I'm dismissive at all of the potential for Jayden to be great, but like, Caleb's a freak, man. Like, that dude, the creativity he has. I mean, there are some plays he's made this preseason that are Mahomes-esque, and you're like, okay, I don't want to say that out loud, but like, I don't have another word. And so I think that the question, I disagree Tony Reale.
Okay.
With the premise
All
of your
right.
question.
All right.
Or at least, I don't even disagree with it. I just think that they're tied. Like, they're asked to do different things. They've both passed their individual test. How the franchise builds around each of them for the next 10 years will determine who finishes with more rings, which is ultimately what it's about.
Yeah.
But they're both great players. They're both doing exactly what they're asked, it seems like. And I do think it's a case study in how to handle a young quarterback that's really, really fascinating, because what they're doing with Jayden here versus Caleb, based off what we're seeing on Hard Knocks,
Sure.
They could not be further from each other.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's always the big question with this franchise, too, as in the Commanders, which is how are you handling things that are not actual football on the field with the football players? And this is where I have a little bit of a pause. And I'm wondering, when a GM comes in and starts summarily undoing in a public way everything that not only the GM but the head coach had done before, how much in real terms does that affect, I don't want to say what expectations are, but how you move? If we're just going to admit to ourselves, well, everything Ron did was crap, so all the players that he picked in the first round, we've got to replace and then redevelop, that seems like a slightly stilted approach in terms of what's happening. And I guess what I'm asking you is, how much faith do you have in that to actually work and turn around within a season and not just after a season?
Well, I think it is going to take multiple years, because remaking an entire NFL roster
tough,
in
man.
1 year is basically impossible. And I would also say this, like, here's where I will disagree with the premise a bit.
Okay.
I don't think that they came in and said everything Rivera did was crap, we have to undo it. I think they came in, evaluated, realized everything was crap, and were like, well, this ain't going to work for us. So it wasn't like a philosophical,
Sure.
if Ron did it, then we must undo it. I think they looked at, because, for instance, Jamin Davis and Emmanuel Forbes, those two guys are being given chances, 2 of the 4 first-rounders. Obviously, Chase was traded before this group got here. Jahan, they just traded yesterday. But for all of them, for the 3 of them that were remaining, they all got chances. Jahan didn't latch on to the new coaching staff, the new approach, the new everything. He has been sent out.
Right.
Jamin, they challenged with a position switch, and he took it on head on.
Okay.
And we'll see if it ultimately works out on the substance, but from a mentality and approach, he's going to earn his way onto this team because he is playing the right way. Forbes, it took a while, but in the last 2 weeks, he's really seemed to kind of catch on. The attitude has been good. The approach has been good. The work has been good. He's going to start for them. I don't know if it's going to go well, and that's kind of what they're trying to figure out in year one is, do we need to, the pieces that we kept from the Rivera era, do they work? Or do they not? And there's a couple that they kept, and this is an evaluation year. And because the coaching was so bad,
Right.
you have to take that time to evaluate because you just don't know what you don't know.
I don't love rookies starting in evaluation years. That's kind of my thing. Like for Jayden, I get it. He's developing. You obviously need the snaps. The experience is what it is. But when you talk about Mahomes-esque, let's not forget Mahomes played behind Alex Smith,
Right.
of all people. At the end of that first season, he got 3 to 4 starts, I believe.
I think it was just one. He
got one start, but he played in 4 games.
Yeah.
I believe. And so, look, not that the Chiefs were in an evaluation year, but I'm just looking at what the Commanders are trying to be. And so much of the NFL is being on schedule with what your personnel has and can execute within your salary cap range and all that. There's a myriad combination of things. And I just think to myself, well, if you've decided this is an evaluation year, what becomes a reasonable expectation for Daniels in terms of his development, in terms of success, in terms of just what? Because you could argue, well, look, if we don't know what we've got, well, we're just going to get a side guy who can kind of hold it together while
Right.
our guy watches the league and perhaps gets in as his rate sort of allows without being too worried about whether or not he's going to dazzle everybody or not. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. And Clinton Yates, because I'm still technically hosting the show. Clinton Yates with us here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 in
I
studio.
ask a lot of questions when I'm in person. I'm a journalist still. Don't forget that.
I hear you. I think that there's obviously not one way to create a great quarterback.
Yeah.
Brady's path was different than Manning's, which is different than Mahomes, which is different than Burrow.
Roethlisberger's
This is
or
different
whoever's,
than pick any great quarterback, any of your Hall of Famers the last 25 years and for the last 50 or 100 years in the history of the NFL. They've all done it slightly differently. And so I think it becomes what's the through line? What can we definitively say? And where I've settled on this and listening to a lot of smart people, I'll shout out Robert Mays because I think he's put this really, really well on the Athletic Football Show is when can you as a quarterback get to the point that you stack good habits, right?
Right.
So if you're David Carr, from a development standpoint and the roster around him, did not allow him to get any good, worthwhile experiment.
I totally understand that.
Peyton Manning, meanwhile, did not have a good anything around him. He NFL record in interceptions his rookie year, famously,
bad season,
right?
rookie year, flat out.
But he was resilient enough as a player and advanced enough as a player that he still was able to learn from it.
Yeah.
And so for Jayden, I actually think he is far more in the Manning camp than he is in the Carr camp.
Okay.
And so because he's so advanced mentally, he's an older player, 23, has a lot of experience, started at ASU, started at LSU,
right.
And just mentally has it. And I think also something that I thought was really interesting, one of the most insightful interviews we did on the show in the pre-draft was with a guy who covered him in LSU. And he basically was like, look, kid didn't have to go to class. He's a fifth-year senior. It wasn't that he was lazy.
No.
Like, he didn't have a class load because he had already done the work.
He's a graduate. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as a graduate student who was doing whatever work he had to do to minimally to maintain his status as an actual student, he treated last year as if he was a pro. And so he figured out the process for him of what it means when I can dedicate all my time to football. And that's why LSU had to change its rules about how long people were allowed to be in the building and give him like a special code because he's like, no, I want to work more. And he figured out the virtual reality stuff. And he figured out, like, if I get in early and run through the practice script, and like he's been doing that stuff here. And that's shown a level of advancement that in camp, like, he's destroyed Marcus Mariota in the quarterback competition. They had a competition. He won it. And so I think because he's mature enough and the person, the character, all that stuff is high enough, he's at a point that even though, yes, he's not surrounded by an optimal roster, he's got enough around him and they've got enough on a coaching staff around him, the right mentors around him. And again, he's advanced enough that he will be able to learn, bank good experience, stack good habits, even if the results, like, I don't even care. I don't say I don't care about the results, but like, he'll be able to make the progress he needs to, that he can hopefully next year, we're talking like a 4,000 yards, high 20s touchdowns, low interceptions, and playing winning football week in, week out.
Okay, I'm satisfied. Ask me a question now, please.
Oh, I'm supposed to have questions for you?
Not. I don't know.
Do I host the show?
This is it's got your name on it. I'm looking at the screen right there.
It says
See,
it does say
Show.
the Hoffman Show.
That's
That's his
this
face
is
and the
his
other
shirt.
side.
I'm trying to point anyway.
Anyway, the point is that this is the end of the segment, unfortunately, based off the time. So I will ask you questions when you come back with us on the phone next week.
Goodbye.
It's Clinton Yates, everybody. More of the Hoffman Show.
Can we do this?
Next. Yeah. I thought first he was going to punch me in the face.
No,
He's
I'm not
going
going
to
punch anybody.
All right. More of this next.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
Broadcasting live today from the Entertainment and Sports Arena. Mystics playing the Sparks tonight. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. By the way, this literally just came in, or I would have sent it in what's trending, but if you're preparing for a fantasy draft, don't draft Zay Jones this high. The Cardinals receiver suspended 5 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy. Not exactly sure of the details, but I just got that alert. And Anthony, it does remind me on the fantasy front, we need to do our show Fantasy League.
Yeah, we do.
That is one of my favorite shows every year. We have people call in and pitch us why they belong in our fantasy league. And it can't be like, I'm in 17 leagues. It's like, cool, congratulations. You clearly don't need another one. You have to have a great, like, we should give a spot to our guy, oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Ross from Tampa. The strip club story, where he almost got in a fight because he was listening to the show and was laughing, and people thought he was laughing at something else, and that was almost a big problem for Ross in Tampa. Like, if Ross, you tweet me if you're listening right now and you want in on the Hoffman Show Fantasy League, we're giving you essentially a buy into it because that's the kind of goods that we want. We want the reasons why you, a Hoffman Show listener, belong in our fantasy league, and we'll do that. We'll field those calls probably late next week, Anthony, or do we save it for week 1? I feel like we should do next week, and then we should do the draft.
Okay.
Like if we did it like, say, Tuesday and do the draft on Thursday kind of deal, maybe Wednesday, and we can live stream the draft.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
I like it.
I could set up the live stream at home, and we could do the draft, and folks can watch. This is a good plan. Let's say Tuesday. Tuesday 4 o'clock. Well, Tuesday 4 o'clock is the vibe check. All right, we got to figure out how we're going to do the spots, because we might also. One thing that we haven't done in the past that perhaps we should is try to give people in different parts of the show a chance to be in the league, because we typically just fill the entire league in the 4 o'clock hour.
Yeah, first hour.
And so if you work till 5, but you are a loyal listener. Or I guess if you work till 5, it's a Friday. You're probably off right now. But if you work till 5 every day and you tune in at 5:30 and you're like, I missed the league, we can't be doing that. So maybe we'll do like 3 spots per hour or something like that. We'll figure out the math.
All right.
So we'll plan on doing that on Tuesday. All right. What we're going to do right now, though, is answer a question, because I got a good one in the chat. And I've also got a tweet about this. So if you get the same question multiple times from different places, probably worth answering, Anthony. But Zach tweeted, I saw people worried about Jahan giving up information on our new scheme and playbook. That's a dumb take, right? We don't play the Eagles until November. It is. I'm not going to call it a dumb take. I would just say it is an overly worried and inconsequential take. It is not something you have to worry about any more so than players moving around the league every single year. There are a lot of players that have played for Cliff Kingsbury that are scattered throughout the NFL. A lot of players who have played for Anthony Lynn, a lot of players that have played for Brian Johnson that are scattered along teams. I mean, look, Brian Johnson was the OC in Philly last year, so there's some things that he believes in that they might see and be like, that's a Brian Johnson thing, and we know how to defend that. And that's a problem that the Commanders are going to have to deal with, and it's a problem that they're going to have on, say, like when they play the Cowboys. Dan Quinn went against Mike McCarthy's offense every single day last year. Makes sense that they would then have some kind of advantage, right? But I think more specific to Jahan in Philadelphia, like, they haven't even done a game plan install yet. Cliff has literally never installed a game plan with Jahan Dotson in the room. So there is, yes, on a baseline level, if I am the defensive coordinator in Philly, if I'm Vic Fangio, do I go to Dotson the week of the game and say, hey, what are some of the core things that you worked on with Cliff this summer? Yeah, probably. And I'm doing that on some level every week when I have a player that has played for the OC. But, Anthony, I've only heard one ever story in my time covering the league, and it will make sense why I've heard this one in particular very quickly as I get into it, where you literally had a player be like, I know what's going to happen. I'll give you one guess on who that player is, Anthony.
He is a 10-year NFL veteran.
Yep.
That played for 3 teams?
I played for more than that. I played for Washington, Atlanta, Houston, and San Francisco.
That's
And
4?
Chicago.
That's 5?
Yeah, 5 teams.
5 teams. And he's really tall, really
Yeah,
strong.
it's Logan. It's Logan's the answer. Logan, and it was in part because, like, I believe the game was a 49ers, so it was Kyle, Texans game when Logan was in Houston. And Logan knew Kyle's offense at a level that most players don't ever know an offense because Logan's Logan, and he had, like, just this fundamental understanding of what Kyle wanted to do and a pretty good idea of how he wanted to attack defenses. And Logan also, I don't believe, was actually, like, playing at the time. I believe he was hurt. I don't think Logan actually ever played a game for the Texans, but he was there. And because Logan is so football IQ smart, and because he's a good teacher, and, like, this is a guy that now coaches, but, you know, I think people looked at him then and was like, that's a future coach. Like, Logan coaches at the high school level now. Bill O'Brien and the staff in Houston was like, we'll let you run the install this week. Like, they like basically elevated Logan to the coaching staff for the week, and they were all over. And I believe I have this story right. It might have been a different OC, but I'm pretty sure it was a Niners, like, Kyle team. And they were all over the game plan that week, to the point that J.J. Watt, who basically never talked to Logan. I think Logan might have even said he never talked to J.J. before that entire season. J.J. either kept to himself or didn't interact with the offense, whatever it was. Came up to Logan after the game, and he goes, that was the best bleeping install that I've ever seen. And then shook Logan's hand and went back to his locker. That's the relative version of the story. I'll have to see if I can get the full story out of Logan again on Take Command. He's told it before. I would love to go find it. I'll tell you what. If we can find that story, because now I have a better recollection, I think, of where it is. I think it was one of our Take 5 episodes. If I can find it in our Take Command archive, I'll try to play it later in the show. But if not, you're just going to have to settle for my crappy retelling, which hopefully was still entertaining. But the large takeaway is Jahan Dotson going to the Eagles is not a risk to the Commanders' entire offense in the Philly games, nevertheless, the rest of the league. Capiche?
Kaposh.
You just say capiche again. You don't say caposh.
Oh, I don't know where I got that from.
I don't either, but it was something. Anyway, Santana Moss is next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, where if you are watching, you will see, for the second time in the history of the show, I am on the couch set, and I'm not on the couch set alone. It is not Alicia Clark next to me. It is my other best friend, famous friend of the show. Clinton Yates is in town, everybody.
What's up, kiddos? This is great. I just want you to know that this is the first time I've been here, like, in my actual life, never mind in this studio, because I know people like the behind-the-curtain stuff, and they like to know about people's lives, and that's where we are. I'm in D.C., by the way, because my family is going on a trip, and none of them would wait for me, so I had to get here a day early to make sure I could leave with their caravan to go where we're going. And they weren't going to meet me there because it was too hard to get to Rehoboth, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll come a day early, and now we got an afternoon. So
now we got an afternoon. I get to see my friend. I'm really excited about
I
it.
know.
My friend's in my home, and I'm pumped.
So I have to tell you a quick story.
Okay.
So today I was doing a shoot. I'm talking a little out of turn here, but I was talking to a tennis player about Serena Williams, who is in the U.S. Open. We were doing an interview after Good Morning America.
Okay.
So I was downtown at the office on DeSale Street. And halfway through that, and I had to tape a pod after, I go to get a smoothie, shouts to Robex, and I've passed this guy, whatever, transient human being on the street, bottle of liquor. This is not abnormal for downtown D.C. He's not doing anything. No big deal. When I come back, I can hear him kind of yelling. He's getting loud. You're not really sure. You never really know a lot of times with mental health disorders what's going on with people. You leave people alone.
Yeah.
But there are some construction workers within earshot who have been done working, and they're now sitting on the curb, or what is it, just eating their lunch. By the time I get back upstairs where I'm going, I hear a lot of yelling. And it is clearly the guy who I passed before, and I'm thinking, oh, no, what is he doing? So I look out the window. he's in these construction workers' faces. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, this is going to be awful. Sure enough, went too far. These two dudes body slammed this guy and gave him the business.
Oh, no.
And then proceeded to get in their work truck and go along their day. And I was just like, rule one, kiddos, never mess with anybody who has to shower after work as opposed to before. Just know that. Anyway. It was a great welcome home moment. So,
life lessons on the streets of D.C.
Anyway.
With Clinton Yates. All right, that's our segment. No,
no, but so what I wanted to ask you about, we're doing things a little differently here.
Yeah.
Because over the past
Yates
week,
is here, so now he's running the show.
I know. Over the past week, the reason I brought this up is that I was asked a question on Around the Horn. Who do you think had the better preseason, Caleb Williams or Jayden Daniels?
Yeah.
And I said Caleb mainly because I think Caleb is dealing with more. He maybe has a better setup. There's more eyeballs. It's just kind of a larger operation that he's dealing with. But I was the only one. Everybody else loves what Daniels is doing, particularly Kevin Clark, who just said his big playability is unlike anything this team has ever seen in a while. Do we agree?
I mean, I agree with Kevin's point that the big playability that Jayden has as a runner, as a thrower, as a processor, as in everything. I mean, he's the best quarterback they've had since Alex Smith, and Alex Smith wasn't exactly a big play dynamo.
No.
So, like, Howell could sling it down the field, but, like, far fewer and farther between than we
Yeah, and
anticipated.
he kind of had, like, meaty muscle downfield. I didn't feel that there was, I don't know. I didn't feel that he had the same sort of level of quarterbackery.
No,
if
for
that makes
sure.
sense.
I mean, otherwise they would have kept him.
Sure.
Various quarterbacks along the way could throw the ball a long way. Cool.
Right.
But on a consistent, like, I'm going to make the right read, and I can put this ball anywhere. Jayden's different. He is absolutely different. Whether it's better than Caleb, I think, is a different question.
Yeah, I do
and
too.
that's, I've had a couple conversations about that recently. I think in part because obviously Jayden's here, Caleb's on Hard Knocks. They're the 1 and 2 pick. These questions come up, and when you are on a station and in a host role where you cover the number 2 pick day in day out, these things tend to be conversations. But we even had a caller earlier this week who lives in Chicago, listens to the show, and he has this debate with his Bears fans friends. And at the end of the day, like, I think underselling Caleb Williams, even as much as we love Jayden Daniels, is probably. Like, I don't say it's a mistake because I don't want to feel like I'm dismissive at all of the potential for Jayden to be great. But, like, Caleb's a freak, man. Like, that dude, the creativity he has. I mean, there are some plays he's made this preseason that are Mahomes-esque, and you're like, okay, I don't want to say that out loud, but, like, I don't have another word. And so I think that the question, I disagree. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 5:30, we are going to redo our 53-man roster projection going into the final week of the preseason. But here at 5 o'clock, it is time, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in, Not My Beat.
Today, it is our pleasure to be welcomed by a great friend of the show, the 4th all-time leading receiver in Washington history by yards, 3rd in receptions, unless I got those two backwards. He's 4th in one, 3rd in another. Number 1 in our hearts, of course, though. It is Santana Moss. Tana, man, what's up?
What's good, buddy? How you doing?
Good. For all the years that we did the show together and all the times I've introduced you with all variety of stats, I'd actually never looked up the where you ranked on the team in terms of yardage and catches until today. So did you know that where you were 4th and 3rd?
Yeah, man. I was, it's crazy. I tell folks all the time that I never really, be paying attention to some of my stuff. But late in my career, that year that I didn't really play as much, I was pissed because I knew I could have easily got ranked up at least 400, 500 yards to kind of solidify some of those spots. But, it is what it is. And, get a couple of catches too that year. But I didn't think about it until my last year playing. I was like, man, why stop now why they don't play me now so I can go ahead and go out the door and pad my stats a little bit. But it is what it is, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. That's funny. I will also say you are the only player in franchise history to have 1,000 career targets because they didn't start counting targets until Art Monk and Gary Clark's last couple years in the league. So technically they only have 160 career targets, although we know that was not the case. But there you go. So that. Add that one to your business card, Tana. You're the only player in Washington franchise history with over 1,000 career targets. So there's that.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, so Jahan Dotson will not get 1,000 career targets for Washington because he is now a Philadelphia Eagle, which is, of course, why we wanted to have you on to talk about the receiver room. And let's start with the trade in Jahan, though. What did you see from Jahan this camp that you think wasn't up to what Adam Peters and Dan Quinn were looking for so that they go ahead and make this move?
I mean, it wasn't what I saw. I think, every now and then you get a glimpse of those guys when you're out there at practice, which I was one of those guys. For the time that we're out there, we're doing our job and you're watching, but you're watching basically, the whole entire practice. You're not really specifically paying attention to individual guys. I would look at the receivers here and there, but you don't see them out there when they're going against each other when it comes to one-on-one or live. And it seemed like he was doing what he's been doing. He's a guy that, I don't know how much you're looking for until you have to really break down the film, you know what I mean, and really watch him as a coach would break down his individual guys and their reps. So I'm pretty sure it was something there, you know what I mean, that stood out that they wasn't pleased with. But I also say, man, when you look at this thing as a whole, we all know the kid can play football. Yes, he might not be what they wanted in their primary guy. And when I say primary, I mean your number one and your number two wide receiver. So if I'm not going to have you as my number one and number two receiver and I have somebody else, slotted as that third guy, why keep you around? You know what I mean? Or why lose you? Why cut you and not get something for you? So I think, when I kind of I'm trying to piece all this together, you know what I mean, and so many different perspectives. I'm looking at it like, look, it was a smart decision when it comes to if you don't see a future there with you guys, let me go out there and bargain them and see who's out there willing to will and deal for them.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know whether they would have cut him, but certainly the value of a former first-round pick being, a rotational piece when they can get a third-round pick in return, you totally understand why Adam does that. And Tana, for you guys on Command Center, of course you can watch Santana on Command Center on the Commanders YouTube page and all their digital shows. For me and the show that I do on the podcast front, the closest thing we have to a coach breaking down film is Logan. And one thing that Logan has said for really going back into last year when he's watched Jahan is there isn't an urgency and a physicality to his game. We know those are things that are really important for Dan Quinn. For a guy who played the position, when I say playing with urgency and playing with physicality, what does that mean to you for a receiver?
Well, when you say urgency, man, it's like one of those things that if I'm in this route concept and I'm not getting boogieing down the field or try to clear it out or get to my spot, that's the urgency part that would stand out to me. I've seen that. I have watched film last year, and I was questioning, was those guys not familiar with the route tree or were, things complicated? Because you see guys coasting here and there, and, yes, that name stood out a couple of times. And then when you say physicality, being dominant, you just got to be able to win your battle. If you're not in the passing tree, but somebody else is, and you have to block for them, like on a slip screen, win that battle. Know where to line up at, know where to, get your leverage on that defender to make sure that somebody's not blowing through you and blowing up the play. We've seen that a couple of times, things like that. So, trust me, when Logan breaks down film, yes, he's not going to say something that he doesn't see. And we've talked about that numerous times. And Logan get a chance to talk to the coaches, and he heard some of those rumblings and whispers too. So, with all that being said, those are some of the things that will kill any player. You know what I'm saying? Especially at that position. If you're not consistent when it comes to some of those things, you have to be consistent. Yeah, I can see you do it once, I can see you do it twice, but I need you to be. I need to be able to count on you every time I depend on you for one of those situations. And if I can't count on you, then I'm looking for the next man up. And when you're a first-round pick, you don't want them to be looking for the next man up, because that's what ends up happening. You end up going elsewhere.
Santana Moss with us here on the Hoffman Show. And Santana, you and Jahan, you're slightly different sizes. You were a little bit shorter, had a little bit more weight to you, but you're really not that far different in terms of the builds that you guys had. And so I'm curious for a smaller guy relative to NFL wide receivers, not as a general human being, but as an NFL wide receiver. And we talk about that physicality piece, and one thing that I know Logan talked about was getting pushed off routes and stuff down the field. How much of that is work you do in the weight room versus technique versus just pure want to?
I'm not going to sit here and say the kid didn't want to, man, because it's hard
Sure.
for me to believe that he didn't want to. But I can say, man, if you just, one of the things I learned that a lot of folks take for granted is it's two different leagues when it comes to what you did in college and here in the NFL. This a grown man sport over here, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of men out there, you know what I mean, like out there really fighting day in and day out, every down for their job. So, if somebody, like, I was one of those guys, I knew when to pick my battles. I'm not a physical receiver when it comes to the standpoint of wanting to fight with guys at the line of scrimmage, but I'm also, with that being said, I don't like the hands on me at the line of scrimmage. I use what I had, my God gifts, and that means to be quick and fast, but I will also not tolerate somebody putting hands on me downfield when I'm running in my route. That's when I turn that switch on and say, okay, I'm going to throw something at you, or I'm going to make sure that you don't try me in those situations. And I think that certain receivers, they got to have that switch cut on sometimes. It might not be themselves tell them that. It might have to come from a coach or come from somebody who's watching it. But oftentimes, I remember being in, meeting rooms in college, and my college coach used to get on certain guys like, man, you don't have a dog in you. And, some of the receivers be looking at, why they're not playing, have all the talent in the world, but you don't know how to fight. And we're not talking about physically fighting. We're just talking about battling when it comes to you need this play better, more than this guy needed play. So it shouldn't be something that you have to turn on. But every now and then, even the most talented guys need that talk or need that pep talk to kind of get them going. And I think we did hear often too many times that was questioned.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Tana, about not saying, like, and I've been really careful about this with Jahan over the last day, too, because the times that I've talked to him, like, I do sense a bit of a dog in him, and, like, I do think he's a competitive guy, but I think the trick is, and you would know this far better than me, having had to do it versus me just talking to guys who either done it in your case or doing it in my 10 years now covering the NFL, the ability to channel that into productivity, like that's, I would imagine that's the really hard part, is like it's not just a want to, it's a need to, and then how do I get that to actually come out on the field?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. People find it because, when you look back at it, you're like, man, the guy can play. Like, you look at what he did his rookie season, you look at what he put up last year. I mean, yeah, it wasn't godly numbers, but those are productive numbers from a guy you look for as in the rotation of a wide receiver core in the NFL. But we say all that, and then we say, okay, but he was a first-round pick. So come year 3, I don't want to have to be mentioning I need this from you. When you're a first-round pick, year 3, you need to be Terry or better. You understand? So I shouldn't have to be going to the draw board saying I'm still looking for a number 2, or I'm still looking to see who's going to, fill out this wide receiver core. So I think those are the things that will raise anybody eyebrows, especially those coaches who are trying to build a team over there, been in a competitive team over there. And when you have so many other guys in that room that have a different kind of hunger, and I mean a different kind of hunger, meaning that, 1, they're trying to make the squad, 2, they're trying to be recognized as one of the, guys on that core wide receiver group, and then 3, they're like, look, I'm not trying to be cut off this team because, I've been here for a few years. Those are the different kind of things that you're battling each and every week. And if you're comfortable where you at because of the contract, because you have 4 years, or you're a first-round pick, I'm not saying that this was going on in, Jahan's case, but sometimes you get complacent with that and might not think you're a part of that battle. And when you're not stepping up or you're not doing something, you might look at it, well, I'm not getting opportunity. But trust me, that eye in the sky don't lie. They always watching, regardless of if you're thrown in the light or not. They're looking to see how you're competing, how you're battling each and every play. And it might be a play or two that you thought that, hey, I'm not getting graded on this, and that might be the play that was the deciding factor. So, look, man, we all speculating here. You never really know, man. But I just think it's odd for, a guy of that caliber that this team didn't see fit from. And I'm not saying it's odd for the team because, look, they're here to build a championship caliber team. So I'm gonna go with whatever they say, that's right for them. But from the standpoint of a former first round 16 overall pick like Jahan himself, I would find it odd that he wasn't the guy that they didn't see that could have potential enough to be there and be that kind of playmaker he was his rookie season.
Well, so this is a fun thing to have you on for. Santana Moss is with us here on the Hoffman Show. Here's the terrifying part for Washington fans, Tana, is you can also speak to what it's like to get a fresh start somewhere when you are a really talented first-round receiver. Luckily for everybody who's a fan of burgundy and gold, in your case, it was coming from New York to here, and you were ridiculous in those early seasons, especially after you got that fresh start and just absolutely took off. For Jahan, he's hoping that happens. It's a different situation. Obviously, he's going to be the third guy behind A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But who knows how the next couple of years go up there. What does that fresh start do for a player? What did it do for you, and what could it do for Jahan?
I mean, it all depends, man. It's funny because I often reflect on that memory of me and my agent having that talk. Like, I really didn't want to leave New York, and they didn't want me to leave. They wanted me to play my last year, but my agent felt like I exceeded my contract with my play. And he was like, bro, you deserve to get paid. They told you they was going to pay you going into the fourth year, and then now they want to back out and say, oh, we need one more year. And he was like, that's ludicrous. So, different situations. You see what I'm saying? Different strokes for different folks. But when I got here, you got to think I was on the climb in my career. I had just played my first full season in 2002, which I was all-pro as a punt returner. And then the next year, turn around, I had my first 1,000-yard season in 2003. Then the next year in 2004, I lead the team again. I didn't have 1,000 yards, but now I take them to the second-round playoffs and have two big games in that standpoint. So it's different strokes for different folks when it comes to what situations we coming from. So when I got here in Washington, I was ready. I was on that high already. So it was no questioning how and why 2005 was so special for me, because I was kind of climbing that ladder at that point. When you get a guy like Jahan right now, I'm not saying he's on a downward spiral, but I do believe he still has growth. And now he's going into a situation where he might not be the vocal point. He's not going to be the guy who they're depending on like we was depending on him here. So when you get a guy that has the talent that he does have, and now he gets lost in the offense with a bunch of talent around him, guess what? He's the guy that's going to get the one-on-one coverages. Now he can sit there and beat you or beat your third-best guy in that slot. So, look, man, I think the sky's the limits for him. I know people don't want to hear me say that, and this might be just because I have so much, I think I have a lot, for Jahan. I really liked the kid. I think he was a guy that I was hoping to see him really flourish this year, because knowing that the talent is there. But, man, you put him on a Philadelphia Eagles team where there's a lot of talent around him at the tight end position, running back position, and both receivers, man, he's going to be the odd guy. He's going to be the guy that team's not going to check, and he's going to be wide open. So now it's going to be like, guess what? Come save us in these situations when we playing guys or playing teams that's going to have these other guys double and triple.
For sure. It's a totally different equation. And, of course, here in Washington, Dan Quinn's going to look at Mike Sanders still and be like, you're the guy. Go get him. Remember what we did in practice. You go do that. So we'll see how that all goes down. Last thing for you, Santana, is what's left here. Has there been any, whether it's Olamide Zaccheaus, whether it's Luke McCaffrey, De'Ami Brown, as you've watched practice, as you've watched the preseason games, any of those guys that you're particularly excited about that are now going to have not just a bigger role, but a bigger responsibility to support Terry McLaurin and support Jayden Daniels here in his rookie season?
I mean, right now, I think the only position at the wide receiver position that's solidified is Terry. Don't get me wrong, we got Luke that's young, and trust me, the sky's the limit for him. So I'm sure that, he'll take wherever they throw him in at. I think he'll be a slot guy. But to me, all those other guys, man, is up for competition, and I do, believe kind of losing Jahan now kind of leave the door open for a guy like Diami to stay around. I'm going to be real with you. Like, coming into this last preseason game, he was trending to me into being the top 3. I do like Zacchaeus, too. He's shown a lot, and he's a veteran guy that knows how to fit in and play his role. So I'm pretty sure that he can easily be here. But then you got a guy like Jamison Crowder, too, who I believe that can be a slot guy. He's a veteran. He can be a punt returner. He can play any one of those positions, X or Z. And that's what's going to be the kind of, what I'm going to be looking at going into this third preseason game, this weekend, just to see how many guys are out there playing. And, if you see a guy in this game, they're really out there playing for a job. So I'm going to be watching that wide receiver group to see who starts the game and to see what kind of, how things transpire going into halftime. Because by halftime, we should know if those guys out the game in that first half, then they're not playing no more for their spot.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point about knowing by halftime. Do you ever mess with Jamison and be like, why do I look younger than you?
Why you going to do my dog like that?
Look, Jamison's one of my favorite guys. I've covered him since he was a rookie. He's looked like he's 38 years old or 42 years old since he was 22 years old, and he knows it.
Hey, he wise beyond his years, man. I mean, that's all I can say. He still looks younger than me. I don't know about yourself. He
okay.
looks younger than me.
Okay. I'm just, that's I love JC. He's the best, and he can laugh at himself, and he's, we're just having fun here on the radio. That's all we're doing, Tana. Hey, really appreciate it. Great perspective as always, and we'll definitely be talking throughout the year, bro.
All right, brother. Take care. Appreciate you.
That is Santana Moss, everybody. Watch him on the Commanders YouTube page, on Command Center. I believe he does the Get Loud podcast, although the loud part is definitely Fred Smoot. So you can catch all that on the Commanders digital channels. Appreciate Tana's time, as always. So that actually is a really great point, Anthony, there at the end that Santana makes, that hopefully by halftime we really know. Because, are they going to play these guys in the third quarter? If you're playing the third quarter, are you making the team? Maybe. There's definitely an extra spot available because we had just 6, and that was including Jahan, and we put Crowder on when we did this on Take Command earlier in the week. But I'm curious now, do we look at 5? Do we look at another running back? I'm curious how this changes the numbers. So curious, in fact, Anthony, that I think we should do a 53-man roster projection next.
I like it.
You like that idea? Okay,
I like
excellent.
the idea, but also, so one of the people I have for pick 6, I don't want to really give up, but I'll make a push for him come our 53-man roster projection.
Okay, so someone that you have in your mind is one of the most intriguing guys that you think is going to make the team. Well, okay, but you're not sure. So you're going to make a case for him in the roster projection.
Yeah.
Okay. I dig it. Right. I dig it. We're getting warmed up. We're out at ESA today because Anthony and I are going to this game after. Anthony's actually in studio, but he's going to scoot over from our Southeast DC or Southwest DC studios here to Southeast after. And we're going to go to a commercial break. 1, because it's time to, and 2, because they're practicing the national anthem behind me. I don't know, Anthony, if that came through the microphones.
Yes, it did.
Okay, so we're going to let them practice the anthem, and we're going to take our scheduled commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to do a 53-man roster projection here on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming on YouTube as well at the Team 980, where if you're watching, you see a very, very different format. Anthony, I probably could move you up a little bit. I think we need to get more Anthony Haney on the screen. So I'll work on that as I tell people that we have a very different layout right now, because on the right side of the screen you see the spreadsheet that we are going to operate from as we name our 53-man roster going into the weekend. So in some ways this is like a power rankings that we're kind of working with here, Anthony. And I have based this off of, because there's currently names filled in. So we'll go through it. We'll try to get through the offense in the next 10, 12 minutes, and then we'll do the defense before we get to our pick six. But we are going to base this off of the one that we did on Take Command, although we're not at all tied to this. So if Anthony, you want to change out any names, you disagree, like we're gonna work together here. I don't know who's Quinn and who's Peters, who's got the final say, but we're gonna work together for this 53. And you'll also notice, if you're watching / currently, if you're not watching because you're listening on the radio, like most of you are, in our spreadsheet is the name Jahan Dotson. So we're going to quickly get to receiver here and X that out, because he's not going to make the Commanders 53. I know that's a bold take, but he's an Eagle now. Okay, so with that, Anthony, are you ready to go? Any other questions set up, necessary, needed here, producer extraordinaire?
I just need the. Did you share the?
I did share the sheet. It's in your G chat.
Oh,
because we're a Google-based company.
Yep. All right. I'm there, and we're all set.
Excellent. Okay. So QB1, Jayden Daniels. QB2, Marcus Mariota. And really the questions, I'm going to just go ahead and Jahan Dotson. Bloop. He's gone. Okay. The question would be, do we want a third Jeff Driscoll being the third here?
I think so.
I kind of think that might be the case. Getting the ability to get here's why we didn't do it. The ability to get third quarter or a veteran to practice squad now is really good. And I know the third quarterback rules are more complicated now, like it kind of counts towards practice squad or something. But I think on like your base 53, just having you need the roster spot somewhere else. I'm going to put Jeff Driscoll's name out to the side. And I would also say, oh, wow, that changed the whole color of the sheet. Sam Hartman, probably a practice squad name. But realistically, I think they probably, I don't want to delete the Dotson line and put Driscoll in, because I still think you can get Jeff Driscoll to practice squad the way that quarterbacking, or the way that he's played so far, the way that teams look at quarterbacks. But I will say there is a chance that changes on Sunday. I think he's one of the guys that we need to kind of watch out for to ball out on Sunday. And he could force his way that if they legitimately want to keep him, that he is a name that if he balls out, other teams might inquire as their number 2 backup. And then if you want to keep him here, you're going to have to name him to your 53 and pay him a whole player salary.
My question to you would be, and we haven't seen a ton of Marcus Mariota during the preseason, and he probably won't play Sunday either. But do you think he's outplayed, or has he looked better than Marcus based off like what we've seen in camp and what we've seen in the?
I think it's a fair question. To which the answer is yes, in my personal opinion, but I don't think that means that he's going to pass Marcus on the depth chart.
Oh, no, I'm not saying he'll pass him, but
yeah.
That's sort of kind of why I'm more so leaning to him being on the roster, just because, I don't know, I think it's a safer bet kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think him being basically right there with Marcus changes. Like, it's about the roster spot. It's not about the evaluation of the player, which kind of sucks if you're Jeff Driscoll and you've done a really nice job.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I think that's a name to watch for Sunday. Okay, the running back position. When Logan and I did this, we had Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson Jr., and Jeremy McNichols as RB3. Michael Wiley has been awesome, by the way. Shout out to our guy C-Dub, who tweeted me earlier when we were talking about Mr. August names, Anthony. Michael Wiley has been a guy that you could certainly put in there. But I just think that McNichols has consistently been their third guy. Like every single week, he's been RB3. How many times in a row you got to be RB3 before we go, hey, that guy's RB3. So I think that he's probably the guy, but this is, again, a spot that on Sunday, if Wiley comes out and kills it, I think he wins the job. So this is, as of right now, I don't know that I would change this, but if you make a really strong case here, I will change the sheet.
No, I like Jeremy McNichols as 3, and I think you said it correctly. Wiley has to go out there and, win the job, steal the job. I think if they're, neck and neck, 1A, 1B kind of thing, or 3A, 3B, I think you probably lean towards Wiley, but again, he has to go out there and prove it.
Yeah, I think he's safely played his way on a practice squad. And again, if you're going to pull a Dan Quinn and look at this as a 70-player roster, like Wiley's certainly on it. But for a 53, the veteran McNichols. But this is the other thing that I wonder is, like, what do they think of him on special teams? And if they really like him, do they keep 4 running backs? And again, like, keeping just 5 receivers feels too thin.
Way too thin.
But is it? If you have 3 or 4 others on practice squad, and at that point you're trying to say, like, who is going to be our starters on teams every week, and could you keep 4 running backs and only keep 5 receivers?
And this is also where Chris Rodriguez being out of the loop also hurts, because he was a special teamer last year.
Right.
I don't know if that's interesting. Maybe we see some of these guys, though, on special teams. Maybe they put Wiley out there to see what he offers.
I think this is going to be, we talked earlier about, do you know by halftime? I think for wide receiver positions or, running back position, like in terms of who makes the squad based off of their offensive or defensive prowess, we're going to know by halftime. Special teams might be a full 4 quarters type of deal.
Yeah.
Let's leave Wiley on the side for now, but let's keep rolling. Okay. Zach Ertz, Ben Sinnott, John Bates, and we put Cole Turner on. How do you feel about that, Anthony, based off of where we are now?
Sinnott has come on strong. I'm not going to lie.
He was always making the team, though.
Yeah. I know he was always making the team, but it's the impact plays that he's actually making. Haven't seen a lot from Cole. I think this is a big game. He's one of the guys I'm looking at. Teasing my pick 6, but I think I would leave him on here.
I would too, and I actually feel like the whole impetus of doing this is like, how does the Dotson trade change things? And to me, this actually strengthens this as a take that I currently have, as a position that I currently hold, because they want to be in multiple tight end sets, I think, quite a bit. And having extra options to do that seems like a really important thing, especially if you don't want to overload Zach Ertz, so that you have Zach Ertz healthy and fresh the entire season. Because you're, for as much as we can say they're in year 1 of a rebuild, like, they're not planning that way. The coaches shouldn't be, to be clear. They should be planning on how are we competitive, how are we at our best in November, December, and hopefully January. And so I think that Cole Turner gives them another option. Now, he has played with his hair on fire, but he also had a ball that got picked off that went through his hands in the 4th quarter against Miami. So I think Turner's roster spot is still on the line. But as of right now, I think in camp, in practice, he's done enough and played the right way. And for what they want, he's also played on teams, by the way, that this is how I would still, not only how I would still have it, but I feel stronger about it now than I did before the Dotson trade. Which brings us to receiver. So we have McLaurin, Zacchaeus, Brown, McCaffrey, and then we put Jamison Crowder in because we didn't really think that any of the younger guys had done enough to beat Crowder out, especially because the one guy that I think Logan and I both were higher on is Bryson Tremaine. And, it doesn't particularly seem like the coaching staff is quite as high on Bryson Tremaine based off everything that they've said publicly and some of the rumblings you hear when everyone on the beat is seemingly saying the same thing, which is that he's not fast enough, and that seems to be coming from somewhere. So 6 spots is what we had. There's currently a blank. What do we do?
Yeah, I don't get the Bryson Tremaine discourse. Like, why?
He's a unique body type who plays teams. He plays like his hair's on fire. He's made plays. I understand his 40 time's not great, but he plays faster than his 40 time. I don't get it either. But I'm also not going to make a projection to something that I think isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, if Bryson goes out and scores 2 touchdowns on Sunday, then maybe he forces his way on. But I think right now, like, I throw my hands up. Let's come back to it for a second, because let me also just scroll down here, because we had them keeping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 offensive linemen. Some teams do keep 10. So is there another position, or do we just go 1 short on offense and make our lives easier once we get to the defensive side?
I think we're going to end up with 6 receivers, though.
I think so too. The question is who?
I mean, so you got Byron Pringle.
That's a great call, actually.
Like, he would be my leader in the clubhouse. After that, for some reason, I think, even though he hasn't made the plays and he fumbled against Miami, Casimir Allen. Cliff was talking about him yesterday.
Well, yeah. It seems like they really want to find a place for him.
Exactly.
By the way, that place is running back. He's not a receiver anymore. They've converted him to running back. Now, does that mean that he could split out? Absolutely. Like, it's not like, sorry, you're a running back now. You're not allowed to play. You're not allowed to split out, because we know that, like, Austin Eckler will line up outside, and, Gibson's done this team in the past, et cetera, et cetera. But, yeah, like, Anthony, you want to know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go delete row. And then we're going to come up here, and we're going to go insert row. And we're going to go RB, and we're going to go Kaz Allen.
Okay.
Now, he has got to make a play, and at the very least, hold on to the freaking football. Not blow an assignment. Be useful on Sunday. But they seem to really want him on the team. Mm-hmm. And I think they could definitely, based off what he's done, get him to practice squad. There's no doubt, because who wants the guy who's fumbled and has been unreliable? Oh, we're going to sign him. Like, no. They're going to put him on practice squad and hope to continue to develop him. But maybe they don't. Maybe they go ahead and start him. I think Pringle's a great call as well. He could definitely wind up making this team. They brought him back. He's got kick return experience. He's got teams experience. He's going to play hard. He made big catches for this team, frankly, last year. There weren't a lot to be made, but he made some of them. Yep. So there's that. Okay, then quickly, Anthony, offensive line. Wiley, Cosme, Biotish, Allegretti, Coleman, Lucas. We put Chris Paul in because we think he's had the best camp of these backup guys. Trent Scott, and then Michael Dieter is a veteran. Is there any other offensive linemen that you would exchange there?
Nah, I think those are the 9 we keep.
I think that there is a great chance that someone else can make, plays well, and we wind up getting some kind of surprise, because Dieter hasn't had a great camp. Scott hasn't had a great camp. I think Chris Paul has played his way into this because he's done a good job, like a decent enough job at tackle and obviously at guard. So again, not world grader or a road grader, world whatever I'm trying to say. People know he hadn't been amazing. But he's been good enough. He's been better than these other guys. So Chris Paul makes the team as well. Okay, so that's the offense. We'll take a look at the defense next. Is there a roster spot that we then want to circle back around to? It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we are streaming live on YouTube as we give you our 53-player roster projection going into the game this weekend. Of course, this is all subject to change because that is the nature of, actually having a preseason game here that is going to be played. But we are going to see how it plays out. We'll highlight some of the guys that are on the bubble, but mostly a lot of these guys obviously are locked in. We just did the offense. Let's get to the defense. And let's do that, Anthony, starting on the D-line. John Allen, Deron Payne, Dorrance Armstrong, Cleveland Ferrell, Dante Fowler, Johnny Newton. Those guys are the locks. Here are the guys that I think are in some kind of battle for a spot. You got, on the outside, Jamin Davis, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Andre Jones Jr. On the inside, you've got Fedarian Mathis, John Ridgeway. I think Benning Patoe has had a really nice camp. Norrell Pollard's had a nice camp. But I think it really does come down to Ridgeway and Mathis. And then KJ Henry's the other name I should mention as well. Any of those guys that I mentioned that you feel like are locks?
I think Jamin will end up making the team, and KJ. When it comes to Phil Mathis and Ridgeway, I want to lean more towards Ridgeway. To be honest, I don't think Phil Mathis makes the team.
Interesting.
I don't think he. Just because, again, I haven't seen him make really any impact plays. He doesn't really offer too much from a pass rush standpoint. He's supposed to be a run stuffer, and, he hasn't really done too much damage.
So I think if it comes down to those two, then Mathis makes the team. However, I think there's room for both the way that we did this. I think the real question is how many inside, how many outside. So in our grouping that we did on Take Command, we had Mathis, Ridgeway as the backups inside, along with obviously Newton. And we had Henry and Davis outside. So in some ways it comes down to, do you want a Javonte Jean-Baptiste over over John Ridgeway? Or do you feel like you need that extra beef inside? And I think part of this is going to come down, frankly, Anthony, to the health of Johnny Newton. You obviously need to get him on the 53 initially. And then if you want to IR him, you can. But it then becomes like the practice squad game. And this is why this is all so silly, is you have to try to figure out, okay, is this guy injured? And is this guy going to need to make the 53, then go to IR? And this guy that gets cut is actually making the team, or who do they want to get through the practice squad, and they're going to wind up calling that guy up for weeks 1 and 2 because Newton's not ready to go or whatever. So in some ways this is all a semantics exercise, because I think all of these guys wind up being around so long as they don't get cut and claimed by another team. But I think when you talk about the likelihoods here, Javonte Jean-Baptiste was a 7th-round pick. You can probably, unless he has an awesome day on Sunday, you can probably get him through the practice squad. Ridgeway has a lot more experience, 5th-round pick, has had some nice games in the league, and maybe you are a little more scared of losing him, and so maybe you keep Ridgeway. But if you were like, no, I think you try to get Ridgeway through the practice squad, and if you lose him, you lose him. I'm not losing Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Then I have no problem on our list here switching those guys out.
Nah, that's a good point. I forgot all about Johnny Newton. It's a new injury he's nursing in his foot, so I can see both of those guys making the team.
Yeah, I definitely could too. And so let's keep it what we got. So that's what we did on Take Command earlier in the week. But this is one that I'm glad we highlight because I think that it's going to be I think this gets decided on Sunday. If Andre Jones Jr. has 3 sacks, then that could change the equation. If Norrell Pollard, interior guy, has a really nice game and gets some pressure, that could change the game here. So I think that's one of the ones that's not decided. One of the interesting ones too, linebacker. So Wagner Luvu, obviously. I think Michael Walker is a lock. 32. He's played a ton. He's the guy. that is played while Wagner has been not playing in the preseason. And then you've got Jordan McGee as a rookie, but a guy who's dealing with the MCL sprain. So again, I think that he should make the 53, but then does he wind up on IR? Because how long is he going to be out? And then you've got behind that Dominique Hampton, who they're now counting as a linebacker as well.
Yeah, I was curious about the Jordan McGee just because, again, he is nursing the MCL. Is there not a way do we have to necessarily put him on the 53?
No, you've got to put him on the 53 to have him not be claimed, and then you can put him on IR if he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. So I think this is actually, like, it was hard before we knew Hampton was a linebacker now.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, he's a linebacker? That makes the numbers work. And that also makes them work at the DB spot where you've got Emmanuel Forbes, Benjamin St. Juste, Mike Sainristil, Noah Igbenogany, Chigozie Anusium is the last guy we put on. We should talk about him in a second. Quan, Chin, Butler, Tyler Owens for sure is making it. Yes, Reeves, sir. Forrest. And it really comes down to me to Anusium, Forrest, and then who was I saying? Oh, Tariq Castro-Fields. Like, those are the guys that are kind of in the mix for that last DB, mostly special teamer spot. And Anusium's made enough plays as a UDFA that they brought in and paid a pretty decent chunk of change that I think he might have a leg up here on some of these other guys.
Yeah, I think Tariq Castro-Fields, though, I think he's been a little bit more consistent. Also, I think he has a little bit more experience, so I think I would lean him before I went with Chigozie.
All right, so in our Hoffman show one, this is the one change we're going to make to be different from Take Command, because that's really what we're trying to do here is make sure the content is different, Anthony. That's our jobs. Tariq Castro-Fields over at Chigozie Anusium. We're going to talk about this more next, though, because we're going to do our pick six. And, you know, we've obviously, in doing this exercise, talked about, and by the way, Tress Way, Tyler Ott, kicker to be named later. Maybe it's Cade York, maybe not. But that rounds out the 53 to make everything official. But let's take a look at this more positionally and highlight some of the guys that we're watching. It's our pick six. This is what we do during the season as well. We pick 6 guys we're watching closest on Sunday during the game. The stakes, much different, though, as these guys are fighting for jobs on national television in the last game of the preseason. We'll get to that next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are live at ESA, the Entertainment and Sports Arena, where tonight the Mystics will take on the LA Sparks. Actually, this game not on the Team 980 tonight because it's an Ion game, so if you're looking for it tonight, it will not be on Monumental Sports. Check it out on Ion, and then you can watch Anthony and I sitting somewhere on, I don't know, Anthony, are we on camera side or are we opposite? Are they keeping us away from the cameras?
We are, I think we're camera side, actually.
Oh, so if you're watching the game and you're looking at two fine fellas down on the floor, that's us. That is Craig and Anthony down there, the Hoffman Show boys. So we're excited to be out here for that tonight. But our eyes, of course, also on Sunday and the Commanders game against the Patriots. The Patriots, by the way, are playing a bunch of their dudes, so you will get to see Drake May. You will get to see Jacoby Brissett, and you'll see, obviously, a lot of the skill players and linemen and whatever that go with them. I'd assume defensively they're going to play a lot of their guys as well. Mayo and company there in New England taking a different tact than Dan Quinn, who said Jayden Daniels not going to start. Neither will basically anybody else that's going to start for real for this team. Going to be a lot of inactives on Sunday, but plenty on the line. And to preview it, to highlight some guys that we are going to watch, it's our Friday edition of the Pick Six.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, Anthony, I will give you the number one choice. The way we do this for the preseason is that we are looking at who we are most intrigued to watch, not who we think is going to impact the win or the loss, because it's the preseason and we don't care about the win or the loss. Although, Anthony, I'm not going to lie, I kind of like this format. I think we might keep this in the regular season. This might be a Pick 6 2.0 this year.
Hey, look, say a little more, man. I'm with it.
All right, so just kidding. This is how we do the Pick 6 now. Anthony, number one, on you.
Number 1.
Number 1, I'm coming in with somebody you guys haven't even been thinking about. I'm going to say Martavis Bryant. Part of the reason I say Martavis Bryant is because they brought this guy in, so obviously they feel as though this guy has something left in the tank. This guy hasn't played in a NFL regular season game since 2018, I want to say November. So it's been some time, but I don't think you bring someone in and not, hope or expect to, get something out of him. So I think Sunday is going to be a good opportunity for him to go out there, make a play, show us, what if he has anything left in the tank, and then, just prove it, man. Be out there as a competitor. Also, he did get the strip fumble against Miami. So he did make a play so far.
He did make a play, made a football play. Excellent. Good work on that. You said something there that's interesting. I made a note here to make sure that I didn't forget it. You said hope and expect to get something out of. Anthony, hope and expect are different things. You can hope to get something out of a Martavis Bryant, and he'll discover the form he had when he was 26 years old or whatever, coming out of Clemson, 23 years old, coming out of Clemson. His best year was his rookie year in 2014, which, I don't know if you know, is a long time ago at this point.
Really long time.
But to expect it is different. I do think they hoped. I don't think they expected. I think reasonably they knew this guy hasn't played in a long time. It's really, really hard to do what he's trying to do. He obviously did something enough on the practice squad last year with Dallas that caught Dan Quinn's eye, but it is much more of a hope than an expect. And so I agree that he's worth watching, and I am definitely, I do not disagree with his place on this Pick 6 because I am very intrigued to see if all of a sudden something clicks. He's got a bit more of the playbook this week. Can they do something with him? And if so, there's a spot for sure with Jahan being traded. But I don't think on my receivers list he's higher than Bryson Tremaine, for instance. Can he continue to force the issue? Can Mitchell Tinsley have a redemption game after last week where he had some opportunities and didn't come down with them? I think Jamison Crowder, down the list, etc. Those guys are all fighting. And the other thing that's going to be hard for Bryant is I don't know that he's a teams guy. What does he give you on? Is he playing on special teams? And if not, you're not making the roster as a 5th receiver or a 6th receiver. I know there are a very small number of fans, probably small enough that I shouldn't even entertain this, that'll say, well, he's fighting to be the number 2. No, he's not. It'd be amazing if he did. But, like, let's start with him. Oh, why not give him reps with the ones and find out? Because he's not beating up on the threes and the fours. You have to earn that, and he hasn't yet. And that's not a shot at Martavis. What he's trying to do, again, is really, really hard. So I'm intrigued, for sure. Not mad at it, but I think there's other guys at receiver that are perhaps higher up on the list.
Number 2.
I will go with the guy who I think is one Mr. August. And I hesitate here to put him this high because I think he's already made the team. Tyler Owens, safety, big number 40. He's been awesome from the spring, worked his way up. I saw some tweets, Anthony, from practice earlier this week that this dude was playing some with the ones. With the ones. Now, the ones is a very relative term when it comes to defensive backs in Joe Witt Jr. because he's got about 78 ones on a 53-man roster, of which there's 10 DBs. I haven't figured out that math yet, but Tyler Owens has been awesome, bro. And I am curious what kind of role he can carve out for himself. And this is his last big chance defensively to do that. I'd imagine he starts at safety this weekend with Chin and Quan not playing. And if he comes out and makes a big hit, makes a pick, or is just consistently excellent, like, does he all of a sudden find his way into the rotation and push a guy like Percy Butler, who's been safety number 3 when they've gone 3 safety sets all camp long?
Yeah, I think one of the words you used was consistent or consistently excellent.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're watching out. You know, we want a guy, if we're going to have confidence in a guy during the regular season, we want to see him be consistent throughout the preseason. So I think he's a good call. And again, he's made plays. So if he can just go out there and continue to, produce the way he's produced, then I think, he's given, Derek Forrest, he's given Jeremy Reese, he's given some of those guys that are at, safety a run for their money.
For sure. And to be clear, that safety position, Defoe, Reeves, Defoe and Revo. Sounds like a great buddy cop film. Defoe and Revo are 2 guys to watch for sure this weekend. I think Reeves is pretty darn safe because of what he is on special teams. But Defoe is definitely one of the guys who's in the mix for, the last 2-3 spots on this roster. What is he doing on teams? Of course, but then can he remind just how good, can he remind us and really prove to the new staff how good of a safety he can be? And if he can do that, then maybe that elevates him over some other guys. I have him on right now, but he might literally be the last guy that makes it. All right, who you got for number 3?
Number 3.
Number 3 is another guy that I mentioned earlier, Kaz Allen. Again, I think they're just trying to, find a place for this guy on the team. Started out with the receivers, was getting a lot of reps at punt return. We saw him on kick return. Last week against the Dolphins, we saw him at running back, and unfortunately he did fumble. But Cliff, he talked about how dynamic of a guy and a playmaker he is, and just getting the ball in his hands, he can be dynamic. So I'm excited to see if he can actually go out there and make a play, especially on kick return. I feel as though kick return, you're making one cut and you're gone.
And he was close.
Exactly.
Close to breaking a couple. Do you actually have that Cliff bite that you could find relatively quickly on Kaz Allen? Because I thought Cliff is not verbose. Cliff does not give you a lot at the podium. And he clearly had stuff to say about Kaz Allen. Now, Cliff is also not avoidant, except for, he wasn't going to talk about the Dotson trade. And when he doesn't want to talk about something, it's very, very clear. We learned that at his intro press conference. He didn't want to talk about head coaching jobs. He didn't want to talk about the past. There's just certain stuff that he was like, it's a new day. I'm ready to go. If you want to talk about this job, cool. Although he didn't really want to talk about this job, quote unquote, either, because he hadn't done anything yet. All he'd done is be introduced. He hadn't started working yet. But point is, Cliff is a guy that if he doesn't want to talk about something, he won't. And I think it's pretty clear he has a vision for what Kaz Allen is, and that vision excites him.
I don't have enough computers to do what I want to do.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Just know that Cliff Kingsbury had nice things to say, and he specifically said that he could envision a Deebo Samuel type role. He was like, I'm not saying he's Deebo, but that running back wide receiver hybrid type of role. And if you have a vision for a player as an OC, that guy tends to make the team. So obviously Kaz can't go out and have 2 drops and a fumble, but if he goes out and has a kick return for a touchdown or something big, Yeah, I think there's a really good chance that Kaz Allen's kind of the surprise, quote-unquote, that makes the team on Tuesday. All right, that's number 3.
Number 4.
That would make number 4 next, indeed. I'm going to go Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Jamin, I think, has got his spot locked up with how he's played, how he's attacked this position switch. I've said this all week, really going back to last week, so I don't want to reiterate too much. The question is then, like, what do you do with a 7th-round rookie who's also coming on strong? Is there enough space, and can he force the issue? And this is something that, you know, as we did the roster exercise that we just did, and Logan and I did it earlier in the week, and we'll do it again on Monday, like, I wonder if this team goes 24 on offense and 26 on defense, and they just go, we have some guys that we need to keep, and we have some other positions like wide receiver specifically where we've got about 5 that we feel like we need to keep. We're probably going to have 5 active on game day. If someone gets hurt, we're real confident we can get 3 to 4 guys that we really, really like, but that aren't that different to practice squad. Because if you tell me you could get Byron Pringle, Mitchell Tinsley, Davion Davis, and pick one more, like literally just Bryson Tremaine, whoever, Martavis Bryant, to practice squad, that's a heck of a stable of receivers to pick from if you need one more on a game week. All of those even give you something just a little bit different. And with the practice squad rules and the ability, so in case people are like, what are you talking about with these practice squad rules? You can just elevate a guy now. Like, you don't have to pull someone down. There doesn't have to be an injury. You can just say, that guy's playing for us this week in a way that you couldn't 2 years ago. But this started last year. And so with that flexibility, if John Baptiste goes out and has another sack, and you're like, dang, we drafted this dude. He's had a couple of sacks and these edge spots. I think the depth at safety and DB could push it that way. And I think the depth at wide receiver actually pushes it the other way, where you look at the receivers and go, I think we could get some of these guys to P squad, because there's just such a depth of receiver, not just here, but around the league.
Yeah, I think that one's interesting from a depth point of view, just because I feel as though the tight end position and the safety position are, you know, positions that they've had a tougher time sort of kind of evaluating.
Well, the thing is also, though, who's they, right?